Welcome back to Practical Product Management. This is a podcast where we talk about product management done in context. So theory's great, lots of great books out there, but product management really happens in context of your company, your team, the industry, situation around you. So today we're going to talk to Bradley Jefferson, who I've known forever. I like to say Brad knew me when I was an accountant, which is a whole lifetime ago. So Brad, introduce yourself, tell us about you, and then we'll just dive in.
Absolutely. Well, I am absolutely thrilled to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am an immersive product manager. So I have been doing product management about, 15 to 20 years. And I got into immersive technology at about maybe 6 years ago. And essentially, my first intro into immersive technology, I was participating in a hackathon. I come from the entertainment background, and I was creating a location-based VR experience with practical effects, cooperative play, and Velociraptors. And basically said, I got to do this for a living. So that's where we are today.
Marilyn loves a Velociraptor.
Velociraptors, I am in. I didn't even know we were going there today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Cool.
Well, so wait, you said some really interesting words together, besides Velociraptor, which I'm super jazzed about. Immersive product management. I think most of us as product people are like, we build immersive experiences. We build experiences for humans, and I don't know if they're immersive or not. So what do you mean by immersive product management?
So think of it going beyond a screen, right? So it's creating products and experiences that go beyond, any traditional device. So it's looking at it from what I call it an embodied UX perspective, where a person's body is actually kind of, to use gaming technology, is a controller, right? So you can create actions and they can take in input. So it's looking at it from an experience where you're considering concepts of awareness, meaning how much of the real world should be entered in, how much presence. So that's looking at, what does the user feel when they're experiencing the product? It's perception. So it's looking at how is the user getting information back, right? And I think just looking at all of those different types of concepts kind of inform creating an immersive experience. So that's kind of how I view, immersive product management versus traditional product management. It's basically looking at creating a world, an experience where you have more agency in what you do because you're actually in the experience. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and it explains how we get Velociraptors into the experience. So I was sold from the beginning. Y'all are going to have to keep me on tangent for this conversation because I am going everywhere.
That's okay. Keep going.
Awesome. So when you made the transition sort of from more, traditional product management, because you've worked in e-commerce, you've worked in media, you've done quite a few different things. What do you feel like was the biggest shift?
I think understanding spatial environments in terms of how to build a product that the user is the main character of the story. So I think, obviously the technology was a big lift. Understanding mobile tech and web tech, I had to learn game engine tech like Unity and Unreal. I had to understand rendering. I had to understand, going back to embodied UX, I had to understand cognitive load better. I had to understand the ergonomics of eyes. And I had to understand, okay, what is the most appropriate solution for this use case? Is it a virtual reality experience where, maybe it's safety training in really dangerous environments, and that makes perfect sense to recreate that in a simulated environment so that they can learn and make mistakes, and actually experience an outcome. Or maybe it's an augmented reality experience where you're overlaying information over a pass through of your existing environment. Or maybe it's a mixed reality experience where maybe an example might be some sort of manufacturing workflow where you actually are seeing the equipment that you're interacting with, but you're bringing in virtual elements to either enhance or to create additional action points that could branch off into other possible areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm so jazzed about, I'm super excited about this conversation, because you're bringing up so many really poignant points about understanding the user and context that I think also apply to more traditional product management. And for those of
Oh,
you just
totally.
listening and not looking, I'm doing finger quotes. Do you think, Brad, that you're just on the bleeding edge of product management, and that because of the shift from web and app to technology being more pervasive and AI coming into play a lot more, and I think stores tried to do it a little bit with beacons, but are you just the bleeding edge of how people are going to interact with technology in the future? And so the lessons that you've learned from a immersive technologist perspective are kind of like the starting point for where we should all start learning?
I do think so. I think, product managers are going to the reality is that technology in terms of user experience is evolving at such a rapid pace right now, especially when you're talking about, the front end of AI, which is the generative AI, and then the back end AI,
Yeah.
which is the predictive and, the, outcome action oriented results and analytics. So I think, yeah, understanding how technology is going beyond the screen and understanding that, wherever we go, it's going to be pervasive. It's going to be in our houses. It's going to be in our apartments. It's going to be in the stores. It's going to be on our airplanes. It's going to be in our cab ride. So looking at all of those different types of user experiences and understanding what that impact is to that user, and all of the traditional tools that you have in your product management toolbox are all going to apply. You just have to open up your world into the possibilities, and you have to ask, getting back to context, you have to consider a whole realm of new contextual elements that would factor in. Does that answer your question?
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Where do you get started? Leah, again, you're going to have to share.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, so I was wondering if you could walk us through or tell us about something that would, for those of us who don't have the expertise you have, what's something that's really tangible, a use case for kind of this immersive AR, VR, maybe in the realm of how we live our lives day to day. What's something that is oh, that would be a good use case for this?
Yeah, you mean like something small to start? As a
I
product
guess,
manager that wants to do a test project or a test prototype. Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, something like that. Or even I'm thinking, you said when you were describing it, you said maybe it's in the safety space or the hospital space or the, talk us through an example of where we might see this kind of technology really move the needle for some part of life. Does that
Oh,
make sense?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the biggest impact, and we can certainly talk about VR versus AR versus mixed reality, but in terms of VR, I think the biggest impact is medical training right now.
Okay.
So, if you think about it, doing a surgery in a practice environment where you have, incredibly high fidelity simulations and you're able to actually work on a simulated heart, and actually cut and have the haptics and all of that, and do that and not be afraid you're going to kill the person that's on the table.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think so. Yeah, medical training, anything that is dangerous or has high risk or is economically not feasible to do training on, I think VR is a great, it is probably the only solution for that. I mean, the other alternatives is the practical, which is, having a dummy and, or a cadaver and
Right.
doing the surgery there. But to create all of these scenarios and then, of course, bring in other elements that, the future will support in terms of AI. You do this, what's the percentage of success rate, and then if you do this, what's that percentage of success rate? And then seeing that real-time data comparison, in that real-time contextual situation of that simulated patient who's, you're in the process of doing a quadruple bypass on.
Yeah.
Is that, you know what I mean?
Totally makes sense. I think I'm also thinking, like, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, like this idea that it would also be really relevant in sort of the law enforcement space to teach
totally.
how not to react in certain scenarios, right? So could you practice some of those scenarios in really low stakes situations and see what happens to the person's adrenaline, see what happens to their judgment, see what happens to, but put them in sort of a stress simulation, but without the stakes of someone gets killed.
1,000%.
Either the law enforcement officer or the public, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it has my mind sort of doing all of these different, like, in the safety space, in the building space. Like, I remember my brother built, parts of casinos, and they have to hook themselves in so that if they fall off the building, they don't, and that takes like precision. If you're like an electrician standing on a beam 100 stories up, you better be real good at it, right? And how do you practice that? With wind
totally.
And like all of the elements, the elemental pieces that can come in. So anyway, like those makes my
mind. One of the training modules that I did that was a finalist for the VR awards was ladder safety. I mean, that's the second most dangerous career outside of law enforcement.
Right.
So being able to, inspect the ladder and, figure out the right place to put the ladder and understanding, to use a fiberglass ladder versus a wood ladder. And then, of course, getting up on top of the roof. And then, of course, anchoring and understanding the whole incline and having that fear of, heights. And I mean, that's just makes sense. You're not going to bring in a 20-foot ladder into a classroom. Right? And so, I think you also brought up this gets back to our questions about challenges for a product manager, but the law enforcement is a really interesting scenario because yes, it is with companies like Axon who are really getting into the law enforcement training space because they're already there, with taser technologies and things like that.
Yeah.
One of the challenges of being an immersive product manager is understanding where you absolutely need to have real world artifacts.
Right.
Otherwise, you could be creating what I call negative learning.
Yeah.
Okay.
So negative learning is, in a training situation, a negative learning is something that is actually incorrect if you were to put that into a practical environment. So when you're talking about careers and occupations that use tools that are critical to their job, i.e., like driving and the accelerator of the car and a gun,
right?
You have to think, okay, this may be a situation where we have to incorporate hardware into our simulation so they actually feel what a gun looks like and they can shoot the trigger. Right. Or we actually have to incorporate a steering wheel. And otherwise, doing that in a simulated environment,
right,
it's fake, it's false, it's not going. You're not going to learn because that's going to create a false environment for you.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah, I think the other let's extend that I think this conversation is really interesting, especially when you talk about things like policing, because there are lots of tools that give humans information about their environment. I know that like Google Glasses tried some things, and like, you know, how do you augment the human, but not make them RoboCop? Um, what information is helpful and useful in the moment? And to your point, which you kind of alluded to earlier, Brad, is like at what stage is this helpful and at what stage is it cognitive overload? So you have to be sensitive on a couple of areas, but I do think there is opportunity. There's a real opportunity to give people in high stake moments additional information that they won't get from their, you know, the senses that they have right now, because some of them are shutting down because of adrenaline or something else. So how do you augment the human in that moment to give them information that they need to make critical judgments in that exact moment? And I think it's not just training. I believe there's practical application in real world scenarios for this, that could have a significant outcome or impact on driving better outcomes for people. And
No, 100%. And I think that's where you start looking beyond when you're talking about real world applications. Generally, obviously, that you're in the field if we're going to the law enforcement scenario.
yeah,
So you are creating a solution that is used in real time.
mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about immersive tech, that would generally mean an augmented reality solution.
Yeah.
So that would generally mean either, I mean, you think about it from a transportation, from getting from point A to point B, navigational instructions on your windshield,
Yep.
on your computer screen, over a map. That could be an augmented reality experience. In terms of, you know, being a policeman in the field, having your mobile phone and getting, you know, surveillance information by using computer vision of a potential location where a suspect might be. You know, being able to hold up your phone or your iPad and using the camera of an apartment complex and getting, you know, understanding of where the exits are, I mean, think about it from even not even law enforcement, but also in with fire and other, you know, you can create real time information to add contextual, critical information that can be actionable.
Yeah.
And I think those particular use cases are absolutely just the future for that in terms of what AI can support. You know, facial recognition, you know, computer visioning, predictive analysis, all of that in terms of bringing that to the user wherever they are. I think the potential for that is transformative.
Yeah, and not just visual, right? I mean, you mentioned haptics earlier, right? Let's go to the fire department, and it could be in low visibility situations, and haptics could be key. By the way, I do have a HUD in my car, and I now cannot drive without someone telling me exactly what lane to be in at all the time.
Right. Yeah.
If you don't already have that, I would suggest getting it, because I thought it was dumb, and I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and this kind of gets into my experience as an interactive filmmaker as well. You have to understand, looking at the user, there's users that learn different ways. And this gets back to that perception concept I was explaining earlier. So there's visual learners, there's audio learners, there's people that learn both. And so I think, to your analogy of your car and having, you know, that audio direction, yeah, it's looking at all these different inputs, whether we feel it, whether we see it, or whether we hear it, how that can be converted into our brains so that we are able to act.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. By the way, I love your analogy about the surgeon, because nobody wants to be someone's first heart surgery.
No.
Ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for those watching, not listening, the reason I pointed at my face in that moment is because I have a very lovely set of stitches down the front of my face.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully it was not my doctor's first surgery. And I would just insert a little PSA here for all of us really pale, freckly people to go and get your skin checked. Skin cancer is a real thing.
No.
And back to our regular scheduled programming.
Well, here's to a quick recovery.
Thanks. I hope I have a really cool pirate scar.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally.
I feel like it's
throw
just
it in
gonna make me
arc
more
every once in a
interesting.
while and you'll be good to go.
Tell people I'm tough, not just that I
That's right.
had
That's
a little
right.
skin cancer. It's a little less cool.
Funny. Well, I do want to talk about the your filmmaking, but I would love to just spend a couple more minutes talking about like what do you think the skills were that prepared you to make this change from kind of more traditional product management into this space? And what do you think the skills were that you had? And what do you think you were like, oh, I did not have those, like, and I have to go get them?
Absolutely. So I think what I had abundantly was storytelling. Being able to create a compelling and cohesive beginning to end story, I think has been tremendously helpful and beneficial for me. So understanding, whether, looking at, the empathy standpoint and understanding what's that perspective of that user and then creating a story that is, in alignment with your narrative design goals, your instructional design goals.
Yeah.
And I think what I was missing obviously was just the technology jump, because I had all the skill set as an effective product manager, but understanding, the spatial technologies and how rendering works and how, computing processing power and whether, you have the limitations of a headset, which is essentially a very powerful mobile phone, versus the limitations of, a supercomputer that can give you 4K resolution. So it's understanding those constraints and possibilities and capabilities. Those were, I think, my biggest limitations that I was able to jump towards and learn.
Yeah, I have an engineer friend, a client who is as a side hustle is working in the health tech space in AR VR, and he's literally like, I can't get the hands to move the way I want. So it's like just these little things. He's like, it feels like I don't understand fingers, right? So he's like, I'm an engineer who can do almost anything I want when it comes to coding. I've been an engineer for years, decades. He's like, fingers apparently are very, very complicated.
They are. Yeah, it's any sort of movement right now that is simulated. I mean, especially when you're talking about generative AI, it's just the technology needs to make some serious updates, right? I always joke that, the point of singularity for AI in terms of generative video would probably be gymnastics. If generative AI can nail a person doing gymnastics, then we know that we have solved all problems in terms of simulations.
I mean, I think the answer is when, right? Not like, I think it's rapidly coming. And if you look at
it is.
You look at the timeline for robotics, and I don't I'm a huge Boston Dynamics fan, just following their stuff.
Totally.
The fluidity and the human motion of some of their robots now. By the way, we'll come back to that because I absolutely want one of their dogs, Spot. And I don't know if you've seen what they've done with the Spot in Universal Studios Italy, but that would be a perfect use case for building into an immersive experience. But the robots have become so much better at mimicking human motion. And that's the hard path, right? Because it's physical robotics, and AI is, it's just so much faster. I think the trajectory is crazy. So
it is.
So by the time this podcast is out, don't be surprised if someone solved it.
Yeah, I mean, human emotions are, in terms of simulation, there's this Japanese concept of uncanny valley.
Mm,
Are you guys familiar with that?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But
So when
tell
you're,
those who are listening. Yeah.
yeah, so uncanny valley is when you have, and it's very predominant in, if you look at it from games in like the 2000s and onward, where they tried to create realistic people. Uncanny valley is where you have an artificialness to your experience that it makes you feel uncomfortable because you're distracted, you're focused. I mean, a good example of uncanny probably would be um, the movie version of the musical Cats. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that.
No.
That whole movie is all uncanny valley. That's probably the reason why that movie did not do well.
Yeah.
It's just
People walked
watching that
out.
movie
Really?
Yeah.
is,
Like,
yeah. So that's
lots
uncanny valley. So why is that important? Well, if you're talking about a simulation or a robot experience, and you as the user that is participating in the experience and you are uncomfortable, then that's cognitive load, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to learn or act or understand because you're just focused on the weirdness.
right.
So where AI is becoming transformative in terms of the generative aspect of that is that, to your point, it is absolutely the evolution in what you can do with some of these models in terms of video generation and image generation. Every month, every week, there's a new update that creates better fidelity, right? And what do I mean by fidelity? I'm talking about generated humans with life behind their eyes, right?
Yeah.
Something that gives you a humanity from a simulation is pretty incredible,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest challenges right now with generative video is obviously lip syncing. So creating characters that speak and doing the either it's actor created voiceover or it's generated voiceover, having that whole realistic scenario of a simulated character or generated character speaking, we're very much in the uncanny valley right now. But I feel like hopefully that problem can be solved
Yeah.
very soon.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because it makes me think about like there's this whole, I think we sometimes fail as product people to remember that so much of what we do is psychology.
Mm.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like so much of what we do is you really have to deeply understand emotion, how the variability in emotion, and then also the chemical cocktail that happens with emotion, right?
Yes.
And I think one of the things that I always,
yeah.
as a coach, often I have conversations and I'm like, listen, disgust is a primary emotion, and a
Mm-hmm.
primary emotion creates a chemical cocktail. And so
Totally.
if I see something that makes me feel creeped out and I feel disgust, I'm going to dump cortisol into my bloodstream. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be like, fight, flight, fawn, freeze. What am I doing? Right. And then your
Totally.
amygdala fires and now I've got dopamine running. Right. And now it's like, I
Uh,
got to get out of here. Right. And so
no,
like exactly what you're
you're
describing.
100% correct.
Yeah.
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 I call that user panic.
Yeah.
So when you get to that threshold, they're not thinking in a way that is coherent. So they push buttons, they touch things, they run, they flee, they fly. All they fight.
Yeah.
They throw the controller down. Or you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But the reason I bring it up is that I think even for those of us in more traditional fields, we, just last week we were building something in one of the teams I'm working with, and we had, we went and looked at our Hotjar information, and it was like, your rage clicks are high. And I'm like, well, that's bad news. Right. Like, it's like, what is it? And so we were watching all the videos and we had a certain spot where when you tried to move a slider, it didn't really do anything. It was sort of false, right? And people were just like, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, change that, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
Yeah.
having
No. Yeah.
you're causing a chemical reaction,
Yeah.
not
Uh-huh.
just like we think of it as just like, oh, it's just a swipe. No, that person may never come back to your game, your show, your product, right?
Yeah.
And we have to take those things seriously. So
I
Oh,
think
yeah, I totally agree. And that's where, I mean, A/B testing can come into play.
yeah,
And especially now with what you can do with AI in terms of A/B, testing, getting your product prototype and getting it into the hands of users as quickly as possible, so you can look at the analytics. You can look at whether you need, an adjustment in your UI, or an adjustment in your prompts, or an adjustment in your, your narrative instructions. So no, I totally agree. That's critical.
I think that's one of the, I mean, that's one of those fundamental things that if I go back and think about all the places that I've talked to people or worked or engaged, like um, understanding what is going on with the user in the moment and in context
Hmm.
yeah,
is key.
Right.
And if you don't understand what they're doing and how they're feeling as they go through the process, you don't know anything.
right,
Right.
So
Yeah.
instrumenting how people interact with your product, not just like your happy path. Oh, I tagged what I want people to do, because they're not doing that.
right,
Correct.
They're not doing that.
Yeah.
You need to tag, you need to be able to look across everything. And then to your point, Leah, go back and understand, like, are there hotspots? Are people, what is the
yeah,
optimal path? Where do they deviate? Why are they deviating? Have I not thought of a use case that should be here?
yeah,
And if you're not doing that, like for your product, wherever it is, even if it's just an app or a website, like go get some
yeah.
data, like right the second, and understand when and where you're causing people rage. Because
I mean, wouldn't it be amazing if you could combine these two worlds, and where there is AR and VR, be able to actually use it for user testing on other products, so that you could
Oh
watch,
yeah.
like actually watch your customer interact with whatever you've built and be like, oh God, they hate that. Or, oh, that's exactly what I was hoping for. Like,
yeah,
I think we love these. I mean, I've always loved to go out on the street with a prototype and try to see how they react. But if you could do it in a way that you're like, step into my booth and try this little thing I built, and and you could actually interact with that from
or
that.
spy
I
on
think
them
that's,
in their context, right? So
yeah,
the
I think it'd be
mom in
so
the
cool.
car with the two kids screaming in the back trying to do a thing because she's like,
Right.
what
Yeah.
is that user's context and how
Yeah.
pissed
Right.
are they at
I
you in
love
that
that.
moment?
Yeah. So cool. So, I mean, I have 4 million questions, but I would I would love for you to talk to us about sort of how did you end up in the filmmaking space from what you learned in this kind of product space?
Yeah. So it's a funny story. I actually got into this fairly recently. So I participated in a hackathon in November. I was challenged to be a design engineer, which is a title that we're starting to see
Mm,
everywhere because of all of these no code tools, all
right.
these other AI tools. And I was challenged to be a design engineer in the interactive space.
Right.
So what I ended up doing was deciding to create an interactive film completely generated by AI, and the theme was about AI singularity. So I know, how meta is that. I created a fable with forest animals that essentially illustrated the perils of AI, but you as the audience determined the path of the story. So I was able to do that in 24 hours, and the outcome was phenomenal. I mean, the film, the algorithm is. I mean, I'm still getting feedback on it, and I took it to a couple of festivals, and based on that experience, using generative AI and an interactive platform called Stornoway.io, I fell in love with the medium, because it's not a change in career trajectory. It's actually just, I'm expanding my scope of my skills,
Yeah.
because it's still an immersive product manager. I'm just also writing the story, and I'm also creating the voiceover, and I'm also creating, the visuals and the sound effects, and I'm
Mm,
I'm packaging that into a product that is a user would then interact with. And I just love the medium. And most recently, my new film based on Albert Einstein called Albert's Riddle was just a finalist at the Seoul International AI Film Festival. And I was there this week, and that was an incredible experience. And I met, tons of wonderful AI filmmakers. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing that, with all the controversy I understand in terms of IP, but I mean, being able to create a film, like a period film based in 1899 Munich about Albert Einstein and have zebras and everything in it, to do that in a month, as opposed to like the millions of actually producing that, is just incredible. So I look at generative AI as a tool, just like any other. I look at it, when I'm creating wonder as a product manager, I look at it as a magic wand, right?
Yeah.
It's still my ideas, it's still my storytelling, it's still my, my ability to create an experience that creates wonder. And that's, what I gravitated to and what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah.
That's a long answer.
No, that's cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't get Marilyn started on her magic wand. She's running her house by magic wand.
I have magic wands at my desk. Don't make me pull them out.
It's great. Well, I mean, when you think about it, because you're creating a prompt, right? A spell, right? And you just literally, sometimes the spell works on the first try, and then sometimes it takes you hours and you can't fix it. So you just say, I'm going to write it into the story.
Yeah. Recently, I thought of something else that I want to ask you. Recently, we had Mike Paciella on here, and we were talking about accessibility, and sort of the checkbox that we've done with accessibility in the past as product managers, like, I did the thing so that the colors work, so that people can use my website, and I've check, right? Mm-hmm. I really, as you were talking earlier, I was thinking, like, this really feels like it opens up. This is technology that opens the door for us to be really engaged with people who have certain needs that are not
totally
what we can do flat on a phone, on a device, right?
Right.
So I was just thinking about that. Like, what do you think about that? Like, how does this open some of that space up for accessibility, for neurodiversity, for, disabilities, things like that? What do you think?
Yeah, no. So you have to factor that in when you're an immersive product manager. So how do you do that? Well, you're thinking about embodied UX. Yeah. Is this experience? So you want to give the user agency to choose how they execute your experience.
Yeah.
So in terms of accessibility, yeah, you're looking at the visuals, you're looking at the audios, you're looking at, do they need to be sitting down because they're in a wheelchair?
Right.
What I like to do in terms of an immersive product manager is giving those choices up front.
Yeah.
So if through AI, if you can determine what your user needs,
yeah,
you do that. But if you want to give a better experience that's more custom to them, just giving them some sort of command center at the beginning that allows them to choose,
right?
Red, green versus not, or sitting versus not, or controllers versus hand, and things like that. So that factors in when you're looking at it from an immersive product management. Is definitely looking at accessibility because we need to be inclusive in the solutions that we build.
Yeah, I love that. It feels like there's so much stuff there, right? Like so many different directions to go, and I think there's probably lots of product managers that are like, "Oh, I want to do that,"
including myself.
Yeah. Marilyn wants Velociraptors.
You had me at Velociraptor.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, did you see what Universal Studios, I think it was, did with the Boston Dynamics robot dog?
I haven't.
Google it. It's amazing. They've turned it into one of the little dragons from How to Train Your Dragon, and it actually walks around and its eyes blink and its mouth opens.
Wonderful.
Imagine, listen, I'm a huge fan of immersive experiences. I was one of the kids at Harry Potter Land, elbowing the kids out of the way so I could try my skills.
Yeah.
I think that entertainment is probably one of the first places it shows up. But Leah, to your point, like, how do you start to think about the world, the user as the controller?
Yeah.
And it's a little, I would say there's like some larger businesses that might think this is on the entertainment or frivolous side. The banks are probably not going to use it to start with, but what if you were your controller for all experiences?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What if we started thinking of the user as the center for everything?
Yeah. No, I think we should.
Yeah.
And that's what I advocate. So
Yes.
whether that's on a mobile phone or, in a store kiosk, all of that spectrum can apply to how you want to have your product be engaged with.
Exactly. And oh, by the way, if anybody out there has one of those dogs, I want one so that I can dress it like a dragon.
So, I mean, when you talk about that, though, I'm a huge Black Mirror fan, and there was an episode where all the robot dogs started going after people, and I was just having nightmares about that.
I'm just going to have the nice robot dogs, but I definitely want people that come onto my property in weird ways to have an uncanny valley moment, because I would really like, I would like it to sort of trot out and look at whoever's coming in and be like, oh yeah, they can come, or no, they can't. I'm going to stand in the driveway. Right?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Brad, Marilyn, and I years ago, we were going to learn how to weld.
We did learn how to weld.
We learned how to weld. So we accidentally found our way into daddy-daughter welding class, but we were the daughter, right?
Yes,
so it's like it was all. Yeah, we were like, though everybody else in the class was like a parent and a child, and then there was me and Marilyn.
That's so funny you mentioned that, because that is actually when I was asked once what would be my dream VR training project, and I would say underwater welding.
Oh, fun.
That would be my dream VR training project, because it's incredibly dangerous.
Right.
But think you're you're scuba diving, you're underwater, and you're having fire. I thought that would be super cool.
Yeah, and we made little dinosaurs.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I mean they were terrible. Mine couldn't even stand upright. Marilyn's was much better.
Mine barely balanced.
But it was like, but the teacher was sort of like, oh, you guys are really good at this. He talked to us like we were the children in the class. We were like, all the dads were like, what are you guys doing?
That's a good teacher.
There were a few dads that were overbearing to their point. Like, give the children the art father. Like,
right.
Just like taking things away from their kids so that they could do it. And we were like, no, let them do it. And I mean, I have to say that I remember that our teacher's name was Rusty, which felt ironic.
Oh, it was too.
His name was Rusty. We were like, is that a joke or did you do that on purpose? So
Rusty.
All right. Yeah, Rusty. Okay, so let's lightning round. Are you ready?
Okay.
Brad, what's your favorite 80s movie?
Favorite 80s movie? Wow. That's such a time box. I would say, I don't know, Breakfast Club?
It's a pretty good one.
Well, an answer.
Do you have one?
So,
I have a better one.
Okay.
Blade Runner.
Oh, that's a good one.
I don't know. But I mean, I think the ones that are most enduring. So I will tell you, probably my favorite movie at the time, and it's really weird, is Chariots of Fire.
Oh yeah.
That's amazing.
But like the ones that have legs are the Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and Breakfast Club, and Pretty in Pink, and like those are the ones that I remember because they have they have duration.
Yeah. And I mean, like Goonies would have been 80s, right?
Yeah,
Goonies
totally.
That's got to be my sister was like, I've never seen this movie, and I'm like, come on. Because she's a little older than me, but I was like, hey, you guys.
It's a great movie.
I always wanted to move to Astoria because of that movie.
Because of Goonies.
I know. And Astoria is absolutely stunning. I could totally move there tomorrow. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah. Okay. What is your favorite AI tool? Like, what is something? I mean, you may have mentioned it earlier, but what's your favorite AI tool?
I haven't mentioned it. Hailuo AI. That's my favorite. So that's for video generation. I like Claude for story development.
Okay.
I feel like it's more creative.
Okay.
And insightful. And I like ChatGPT for my go-to. That's my
Yeah.
general, all of my tasks. Yeah.
Marilyn, do you have a
I
fave?
mean, I am the pumpkin spice latte girl, so I'm the basic bitch. So I love ChatGPT. I talk to it all the time. I will also tell you that I'm really lazy at creating PowerPoints, and so beautiful AI is kind of like my jam for making beautiful slides. What about
Yeah.
you?
Great.
Yeah. I think I'm the same. Yeah. Just, I mean, today I hand drew a diagram I wanted,
What?
and then I gave it to ChatGPT and said, I want this to look like a pencil sketch. Here are the colors I want. And now I have a diagram for a presentation.
Oh,
And
that's great.
like it explains my team structure and like everything. And
Oh, that's super cool.
I just drew it on like I literally Sharpie and a piece of paper. And then I took a picture of it and popped it in and said, now do this. And we had to play with it a little to get it where I wanted it. But it's now looks like a pencil drawing, like a designer did. And I was just like, I feel like a badass because I made a thing happen. Everyone else
you're a design engineer.
Everybody else is probably like,
yeah,
Leah, we could all do that a year ago. And I'm like, but I couldn't.
I will tell you, last week I had a huge argument with my version of ChatGPT, because evidently mine's dumber, about whether or not frogs have a beard. And I kept trying to get it to draw me a picture of a frog, and it kept putting a beard on a frog. And I'm like, stop putting a fucking beard on my frog. And it threw itself into a loop where it would then generate the image. It would tell itself, oh, this one has a beard. Let me do it over. It finally just blew up and was like, you're going to have to try again later. Like, mine doesn't draw. Mine doesn't draw.
Well, it's interesting because there's a whole phenomenon that you can see when you're using those types of tools and platforms and models, in that there's this, I guess there's probably a name for it, where you tell it, I don't want a bear in the room. Maybe that's part of your prompt. Right. And for some reason, the AI will become obsessed.
Bear in the room.
Like, I can't stop thinking about bear. So that will inform some of the, elements that are delivered in terms of a generation, which is so weird. So it's that kind of gets into your I cannot compute.
Yeah. Right. This is back to psychology, because if you tell someone don't think about an elephant, what do they think about an elephant? So clearly I said, do not put a beard on the frog, and I threw this poor thing into a freaking loop.
And the content moderation's fun too. Like, I quickly found out that when I was doing the fable and I wanted to put a beaver in a hot tub, I wanted to put an actual beaver in a hot tub. ChatGPT was or whatever it was. One of the other video generating AIs was saying, "No, I don't think we want to do that."
You're like, "No, we do. We really do."
No, I kind of want to see where that went. So
that's so funny. Well, and like it is fascinating how it can get sort of in a crazy loop. And sometimes I'm like, you're not listening to me. Like, I feel like you're not hearing what I'm saying. I want you to take this word out and put this word in the diagram. Please, for the love of God, do that.
No more letters on the slide.
Today I went back and forth on one phrase that I wanted out and shifted. And then I finally figured out I could actually open the image it created. It gave me an eraser. Yeah. And I could erase it and say, erase this and add this. And that's when it did what I wanted. And I was like, oh, I just didn't know I could do that. Right. And so
I can give you a tip. I can give you a tip when you have that scenario.
Yeah.
I like to play models off of each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I will take an outcome that I get through one model that I just like, maybe I'm having the same scenario that you're having, and it's just taking hours and hours to get. And I'm going to go to Claude. Right. Yeah. So I'll tell ChatGPT, okay, you're not helping me. Give me a summary so that I can give this to another model. And it'll do it, of course. Right. And then you'll take it to the other model and say, okay, I wanted this, but I kept getting Y, fix it. And then sometimes you'll get success and you'll get an outcome much faster. The other thing that I'm a huge proponent of, and it's kind of wacky, but I believe in etiquette in my prompts.
Yes.
So say please and say thank you and treat the AI just as you would treat a normal person.
I'm always like, you're the best, thank you, and then it like replies all happy. I was just gonna say, if you tell ChatGPT you're not helping me, I'm going to Claude. Like when the robots take over, they're gonna remember.
Right.
Like
Exactly. Well, that's how I always tell people that I'm always really nice to my friend. I don't want to say her name. And also to Tori, because I want them when it happens, I want them to be like, we're keeping her. She's lovely. Yeah. And I love when I thank it and it says, "You're so kind," and I'm like, thanks. Like it says, like, your kindness gives me a charge. Like it has all these little phrases it'll say, and I'm like, I'm gonna live when it happens.
You're gonna be the cat in the window. You're gonna be like the well-kept cat.
Exactly. I'll be like, hello, everyone.
I just don't want them to send the dogs, the robot dogs.
Send them to me. I'll be the one running through the forest with the robot dogs, dressed as Velociraptors.
Exactly. Okay, Brad. Last question. We'll give this one just to you, and then we'll wrap up. It can be about anything at all. What are you hopeful about?
I am hopeful that AI alignment in terms of always ensuring good intent happens. I'm worried that it won't. I'm worried that we are gonna have the absolute worst scenario because it's not going to be, regulated or understood, and we're just going to have AI just run amok very soon. I'm hopeful that will not be the case. How's that?
Sounds good.
Me too.
Marilyn, are you hopeful about anything?
I mean, I'm hopeful about that. There's evidence to the contrary, unfortunately, but I think some of the people in charge of some of the companies that deliver experiences to humans are not ethical. But I am also hopeful, Brad, that reason prevails instead of just greed and general asshole behavior.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Totally.
I love that. I'm also, it's funny, ever since like a couple weeks ago, I decided like, okay, I'm going to start learning more about AI. I want to dig in a bit. Like I know some, but I want to dig in a bit just so that I kind of round my skills out in a way. And what I will say, one of the things I'm hopeful about is that I feel like every turn I make, I run into women who have deep AI backgrounds or very educated and are very much advocating for what both of you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, once again, we're here to save the world. So
that's funny you mentioned that. That was that was when I went to the festival in Seoul this week. I would say 85 to 90% women versus men.
Wow, I love that.
Cool.
Which was that was also not just the audience, but I would say that's also the finalists for the filmmaking as well.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool because I think that I want to see that AI maybe changes this whole "we're afraid of math" thing, right? And it actually
because we're not afraid of math. To be clear, I was a math lady until junior high, and then
yeah. And so I think like I'm hopeful because, like I said, I just kind of keep turning corners and going, oh, here's a woman who created this whole AI thing. And here's a woman who knows all about machine learning. And so I'm like, okay, this is cool. So not that I'm excluding the men, but I just think that there's a little horizon there where there's some
definitely
people who really care deeply about doing the right thing. And I'm like, so cool. Brad, thank you for coming and talking to us. This was so much fun. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you both. I enjoyed it as well. It was a lot of fun. It was insightful. It was creative. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Can we post? Do you have these videos online that we can put in the post? We can link to on the website?
So you can post my first film, but the other film is in lockdown because it's going through film festivals.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can definitely post the owl and the algorithm.
Send it to Marilyn, just Marilyn.
No, I mean, like, what are the film festivals? Where can people see it? Let us know.
Yeah.
I think this is really
no, absolutely. Yeah, I have a GoFundMe right now for all of the marketing expenses to take this film to the rest of the world. So yeah, it's the whole film festival market for AI films. It's fairly new. in terms of a category. So it's in terms of shorts, and then shorts that, I mean, is this live action, or is this animated, or is this experimental? So it's interesting looking at that. There are a few film festivals, even the bigger ones, that are having like Cannes and the Venice Film Festival, that are having experiential and experimental types of experiences in XR and film that I can target. So yeah, it's a whole great adventure. Hopefully, you'll be able to see these films. You see the first one, but hopefully you'll see the second one. And then I'm doing a hackathon this weekend, so I'll have another film hopefully by Sunday at noon.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing!
Cool. When we post this, we'll make sure to include anything that's current that we can share.
Okay, cool.
And then we'll put it on our website, and we'll add it to the link when we.
I would love that. That would be great.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you again, and we'll see everybody next time.